The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the old neighborhood, painting the brick buildings in shades of amber and gold. Rachel Morgan sat on the concrete steps, outside the abandoned warehouse where she'd been sheltering for the past 3 weeks. Her cream-colored dress, once beautiful, now worn and stained, hanging loosely on her thin frame. At 28, she looked both younger and older than her years, her blonde hair tangled, her face smudged with the dirt of street living, but her blue eyes still holding a spark of determination that homelessness hadn't yet extinguished. She'd been a teacher once, had an apartment, a car, a life that made sense. Then her mother's cancer treatment bills had come, wiping out her savings. Then the layoffs at her school. Then the eviction. The descent had been swift and merciless, each safety net failing in turn until she found herself here, on the streets, trying to survive one day at a time. Rachel was lost in thought, trying to decide whether to walk to the shelter for dinner or save her energy, when she heard it. A child's scream, high and terrified, cutting through the ambient noise of the city. She was on her feet before she'd consciously decided to move, her eyes scanning for the source. Then she saw him, a little boy, maybe 4 years old, in a blue shirt, standing in the doorway of a building 3 doors down. Smoke was billowing out behind him, dark and thick, and through the windows, Rachel could see the orange glow of flames. The boy was frozen in the doorway, crying, coughing, too terrified to move forward or back. Rachel didn't think. Thinking would have meant acknowledging the danger, weighing her own safety, considering all the reasons to let someone else handle it. Instead, she ran. Her bare feet, she'd lost her shoes 2 days ago, slapped against the pavement as she sprinted toward the burning building. People were starting to notice, to shout, to pull out phones, but no one else was moving toward the child. "I've got you, baby," Rachel called as she reached the boy. "I've got you." She scooped him up, feeling how small and fragile he was, how his little body shook with terror. The smoke was acrid and choking, the heat from the building intense even from the doorway. Rachel turned to run back the way she'd come, cradling the boy against her chest, when she heard a cracking sound above them. She looked up just in time to see part of the building's facade beginning to give way. Without thinking, she threw herself forward, covering the boy's body with her own as debris rained down around them. Something struck her shoulder, sharp and painful, and she felt the skin of her arms and legs scraping against the rough pavement as they hit the ground. But she kept her grip on the child, protecting him with her body until the cascade of brick and mortar stopped. "Are you okay?" she gasped, pulling back to look at the boy's face. He was crying but nodded, no visible injuries. Rachel struggled to her feet, ignoring the pain in her shoulder and the blood running down her arms and legs from the scrapes. She carried the boy away from the building, away from the danger, not stopping until they were a safe distance down the street. By then, sirens were wailing in the distance, getting closer. Firefighters and paramedics were arriving. People were crowding around, asking questions, trying to help. Rachel set the boy down gently, checking him over once more. "You're safe now," she told him, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "You're going to be okay." "Thank you," he whispered, his voice hoarse from the smoke. "You saved me." "Ma'am, we need to check you over," a paramedic said, approaching with a medical kit. "You're injured." "I'm fine," Rachel said automatically. She'd learned that accepting help often meant answering questions she didn't want to answer, dealing with systems she no longer trusted. "The boy needs you more. We have someone with him." "Please, you're bleeding." I said I'm fine. Rachel backed away, suddenly aware of all the eyes on her, the attention she didn't want. She looked like what she was, homeless, dirty, someone who didn't belong in a rescue story. She could see the questions forming in people's faces, the mix of gratitude and discomfort that she'd learned to recognize. Before anyone could stop her, Rachel slipped into the growing crowd and disappeared. She found a quiet alley 3 blocks away and finally allowed herself to sit down, to acknowledge the pain. Her shoulder throbbed where the debris had struck it. Her arms and legs burned from the scrapes, blood seeping through the torn fabric of her dress. But she was alive, and more importantly, that little boy was alive. Rachel closed her eyes, letting the adrenaline drain away, replaced by the familiar exhaustion that was her constant companion. She'd done something good today. That would have to be enough. What Rachel didn't know was that the little boy she'd saved was Max Harrison, and that his father, CEO and majority owner of Harrison Technologies, one of the city's most successful companies, was currently in a meeting downtown when he got the call that his son had been in a fire. Ethan Harrison was 35, wealthy beyond most people's dreams, successful by every measure society used. He'd built his company from the ground up, working 100-hour weeks, sacrificing everything for success. His marriage had been a casualty of that. Ambition. His ex-wife had taken their daughter to California 2 years ago, and Max, his son from a later relationship that had also failed, lived with him full-time. Max was everything to Ethan. The boy's mother had struggled with addiction and had agreed that Max was better off with his father. Ethan had poured all the love he'd failed to show in his romantic relationships into his son. And the thought of losing Max was more terrifying than any business failure could ever be. When the call came that Max had been in a fire at his after-school program, that he was safe, but had been rescued by a stranger who had then disappeared, Ethan left his meeting without a word. His driver had him at the scene in 15 minutes, where he found Max wrapped in a blanket, being checked over by paramedics, physically unhurt but shaken. "Daddy!" Max cried when he saw his father, and Ethan pulled him into his arms, holding him so tight he worried he might hurt him, but unable to let go. "I'm here," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I'm here, buddy. You're okay. You're safe. The lady saved me," Max said, his words tumbling over each other. "The fire was so scary, and I couldn't move, and she came running and picked me up. And stuff was falling, but she protected me, and she got hurt, but then she left. And I didn't get to thank her properly, and Daddy. We have to find her." "We will," Ethan promised. "I swear to you we'll find her." But it wasn't easy. The woman had disappeared into the crowd before anyone could get her name. The witnesses Ethan's security team interviewed could only provide vague descriptions: blonde, young, wearing a light-colored dress, homeless or transient based on her appearance. No one had seen where she'd gone. The security footage from nearby buildings showed her running toward the fire, carrying Max away and then slipping into the crowd. But the cameras lost her after that. She'd vanished as thoroughly as if she'd never existed. Ethan spent the next 3 days searching. He had his entire security team on it. He hired a private investigator. He went to the spot where Max had been saved and walked the neighborhood himself, showing people a sketch artist's rendering based on witness descriptions. Nothing. It was as if the woman had been an angel who'd appeared in their moment of need and then returned to wherever angels go when their work is done. Finally, on the 4th day, Ethan was walking through the warehouse district, showing the sketch to anyone who would look at it, when an older man loading boxes onto a truck stopped him. "Yeah, I might have seen her," the man said, studying the picture. "Woman who looks like that sleeps rough sometimes over by the old Miller building. Can't say for certain it's her, but could be." Ethan's heart leaped. "When? When did you see her?" "Earlier this morning." "But listen, mister, you look like money. And people around here, they don't always trust money. You go storming in there with your fancy suit and your security guards. She'll disappear again. You want to find her, you need to go gentle. Go alone, be respectful." Ethan took the advice. That evening, as the sun was setting, he went alone to the Miller building. He found Rachel sitting on the steps where he'd been told she sometimes stayed, her injured arm wrapped in what looked like an old t-shirt, her face gaunt with hunger and exhaustion. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you the woman who saved a little boy from a fire 4 days ago?" Rachel looked up, and Ethan saw her eyes widen with recognition, not of him specifically, but of what he represented: money, authority, trouble. She started to stand, to flee, but Ethan held up his hands. "Please don't run. I'm Ethan Harrison, Max's father. You saved my son's life, and I've been searching for you ever since." Rachel stood wary, poised for flight. "He's okay? Your son?" "He's perfect. Thanks to you." Ethan took a step closer, and in the fading light, he could see the makeshift bandage on her arm, the healing scrapes on her legs, the way she held herself as if her shoulder pained her. "But you're hurt. Please let me help you. Let me repay what you did for my son." "I don't want money," Rachel said quickly. "I'm not looking for a reward. I did what anyone would do. But not everyone did it, Ethan said softly. There were dozens of people on that street, and you're the only one who ran toward the danger instead of away from it. You protected my son with your own body. You were injured saving him. That's not what anyone would do. That's heroism. Rachel shook her head. I just reacted. I didn't think about it. That makes it even more remarkable. Ethan gestured to the steps. Will you sit with me? Just for a moment, please? After a long hesitation, Rachel sat. Ethan joined her, careful to leave space between them, not wanting to crowd her. Max won't stop talking about you, Ethan said. He calls you his angel. He's worried about you. Wants to make sure you're okay. He asked me to find you so he could thank you properly. I'm fine. You're hurt and you're living on the street. Ethan kept his voice gentle, non-judgmental. I don't know your story, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. But I meant what I said. You saved the most precious thing in my world. Please let me help you. I don't do charity, Rachel said, her voice tight. It's not charity. It's gratitude. Ethan paused, trying to find the right words. Do you have family? People who would want to know you're safe? Rachel's face crumpled slightly before she got it under control. My mother died 6 months ago. Cancer. I don't have anyone else. I'm sorry, Ethan said, and meant it. That must be incredibly hard. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ethan spoke again, his voice careful. I have a proposition for you. Not charity, but an actual job. I need someone I can trust around. Max. Someone who would protect him the way you did. His mother isn't in the picture, and I work long hours. I have a nanny, but Max needs more than just childcare. He needs someone who cares, who sees him as more than just a job. Would you consider being part of his life? Working for our family? Rachel looked at him with disbelief. You want to hire me? You don't know anything about me. I know the most important thing. I know you'd run into a burning building to save a child you'd never met. I know you'd shield a 4-year-old with your own body. That tells me more about your character than any resume ever could. I was a teacher, Rachel said quietly. Before 2nd grade.